So just to let everyone know, we appreciate all of you coming, and both as candidates and as participants. So thank you all. And we'll wait another couple of minutes and start at 7 o'clock.
So Tammy, we'll see you.
If I can interrupt for one moment, our timer is here, Spencer. So Spencer, would you say hi and touch base with Shea, who's our moderator? You're muted, Spencer.
Thank you. Hi. I need to figure out which account actually I can just put it.
I think we're ready to start. So we've got a plan. Barb's going to do the timing manually. Unless you know exactly what you're doing right now, Spencer, let's just move with that.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Spencer, do you know how to do it, or are you working on that?
I'm just pulling up the file right now, but I have it.
Okay, so Spencer, if you're able, what we would appreciate from you is timing everyone from when they begin. They get 2 minutes. And we'd like to give them a warning that 15 seconds are left. Can you break in and just say 15 seconds left at the appropriate time?
Yes.
Okay. And then at 2 minutes, we want them to be able to finish their thought, but if they continue to speak, we want them to be muted. Can you do that as well?
Yes. So I think the 15-second kind of heads up shouldn't totally be necessary, because they should be able to see it, and I can do that. So they just see that while they're speaking, if that makes sense.
That's very nice. That's
So
very
okay. That should be pretty clear. Great.
all right. So just so we are clear, Spencer, you will start the timer. They will be able to see it. And at 2 minutes, they can finish their sentence, but you will then mute them should they continue to flaunt the rules and speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Well, it's 7:01. So Barbara, you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah. Okay. I want to introduce myself. Welcome, everybody. And I hope you have having a good evening. I'm going to be admitting people as I talk. Thank you for joining the Fidalgo Democrats Zoom meeting tonight. My name is Barbara Cooper, if you don't know me, and I am the chair of the Fidalgo Democrats. And so the Fidalgo Democrats are an independent democratic association with a focus on education. And I'm going to stop for a minute and make sure everybody is in.
I'll do that for you while you're talking, Barbara.
Okay. Our next meeting is August 10th. We meet the second Tuesday of the month. A Zoom link will be sent out about 10 days before the meeting and let you know what the topic is, and the time will be 7. Tonight, the evening is a candidates forum. We have invited all the candidates for the Anacortes City Mayor and the contested Anacortes School Board seats. There's 2 positions there. And I'd like to start the meeting with an acknowledgement. We, the Fidalgo Democrats, acknowledge that we gather on indigenous land, the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Samish and the Swinomish people, and pay our respects to elders, both past, present, and future. Are there any elected officials or Democratic Party officials, including PCOs? Please introduce yourself and let us know what you do. Okay, I don't.
Are we? What do you mean by Democratic officials? Sorry.
People who are elected to different positions, not the people who are going to be here as the candidates, PCOs, So that would be people that are involved, for example, Valit or Rita, if they would like to introduce themselves, that's great. If they would prefer not to, that is up to them.
Barbara, I'll be happy to start. Anyway, good evening, folks. I'm Lloyd Seifert, the PCO for Precinct 119, Dewey Beach. It's good to be with everybody. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. Rita, looks like you're raising your hand. Rita?
Hi, yes, I am PCO for Skyline, Precinct 224, and I am the 40th District Representative on the E-Board for Skagit County Democrats.
Okay. Then I see Jan, Harold Robinson.
Hi, Barb, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I am the PCO for Rosario Precinct on the South Fidalgo.
Okay. Carolyn Moulton.
Hey, my name is Carolyn Moulton, and I am a city council member for Anacortes, position 6 at large. Thanks for hosting this.
Okay, you're welcome. And so I'll also say if there's any candidates that are not part of the forum that would like to introduce themselves, that would be fine as well. So if there's someone here who's running but not part of the forum, please feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Real
I see.
quick, sorry, before I move on from the party officials thing, I'm actually the chair of the 40th District Democrats as well. So yeah, that's okay, cool. Sorry, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Spencer. Appreciate that. Okay, I see Bruce Mcdougall is here. Would you?
Hi, yeah, I'm Bruce Mcdougall. I'm a member of the Anacortes City Council.
Wonderful. And I see Amanda Hubik is here.
Hi, everybody. Amanda Hubik, running for Anacortes City Council, position 4 at large.
Okay. All right. Is it? All right. Well, I don't see anybody else right at the moment, so we're going to move on. Tonight, I'd like to introduce Shea Shuel Burke, who will be our moderator for tonight's forum. She is a retired cardiologist, a former Highline School Board member, and retired from 5 terms in the Washington State House of Representatives. She was born and raised in New York, has 2 children and 2 grandchildren with her husband of 47 years. They have lived in New Zealand and Belgium. They have been in the Pacific Northwest since 1979 and in Anacortes since 2015. So that is, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Shea and let her talk about what we need to do.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. I'm going to start by asking everyone to be sure that they've muted themselves. We're hearing a little bit of background noise, which will get in the way. So thank you for muting yourselves. And thank you all for joining us tonight. It's amazing after all these months of Zoom meetings, the technology is wonderful, but still difficult. So we're going to do our best. I want to say thank you to the Fidalgo Democrats for hosting this event. I think local government is extremely important, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and work this with you. I want to also certainly thank all of the candidates for participating and for their willingness to do the work that it takes to serve the public. It is not easy to run for public office. And finally, I want you all to give yourselves a round of applause. Your civic engagement and exercising your right to vote and educating yourself before that is absolutely critical for the ongoing success of our democracy. And I think this is what the Fidalgo Democrats stand for. I want to thank the 40th District Democrats, Spencer and Brad, for helping us with our Zoom support. Now, the way we're going to do this is everyone's going to stay muted. We have some prepared questions for each of the candidates, and then we invite questions from the audience. You can send them by chat to me, and if we have time and there's something we haven't already asked, we will try to get to them. You all were invited to submit questions a day or so ago via email, and you responded terrifically well. I have literally dozens of excellent questions. So thank you for that. Clearly, we're not going to have the time to get to all of them. We'll simply do our best. We want to balance getting through questions with giving the candidates an opportunity to give us meaningful answers. And that's a tough balance. Again, we're going to do our best. So here is the way the forum is going to operate. Each of the candidates is going to have 2 minutes to make an introductory statement, and then we'll follow with questions, and they'll have either 1 or 2 minutes to answer them. And in the end, they're going to have the opportunity to do a 2-minute closing statement and perhaps touch on anything that they think is important that they didn't get to before. The candidates were asked to be specific and to really give us rationale and evidence where appropriate for the things that they're saying and what they stand for. We have a predetermined order for the candidates to speak, trying to make this absolutely as fair as we can. So those who speak first one time will speak last the next time. We'll be alternating between school board and mayoral candidates, really trying to make sure that everybody has equal time. So I think that's all the housekeeping. And so to begin, we'll start with opening statements. We're going to start with and I should go on and say that of the 8 candidates, 7 are with us here tonight, and we thank you very much for that. Matt Miller unfortunately had a family conflict, which has prevented him from joining us. And when we're done with this, you're all encouraged to go to the candidates' websites, to their voters' pamphlet statements, and engage them further, since they may not fully answer everything you want to know tonight. So we're going to start with the mayor's race. And Ryan, you have drawn the short straw for speaking first, followed by Tammy. So Ryan, the floor is yours for the next 2 minutes. And thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Walters. I'm running for mayor. I grew up in Anacortes, graduated from Anacortes High School. I'm a former Skagit County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. I'm a land use attorney. Currently, I'm the planning director for the Samish Indian Nation, and I'm the most senior member of the Anacortes City Council. I was elected just about 10 years ago, served a term as mayor pro tem. I've served on almost all of the council committees, and I've been at the forefront of the progress that we've made in Anacortes in the last 10 years, including repairing our roads, rebooting our infrastructure, rebooting our comprehensive plan and our zoning code, building our new fiber internet service. And I've written legislation to protect our forest lands and our shorelines, and I've helped write our resolution on inclusion, because everyone who lives in our community should feel welcome, and they should be defended against hate speech. And I was the driver behind our successful sales tax ballot measure to put that on the ballot and make housing more affordable, so that we can have a whole community here in Anacortes, so that people who work here can also afford to live here. I have a strong commitment to environmental protection, to transparency, to fiscal responsibility, to diversity and inclusion, to performance and accountability, because delivering results is important, and to long-term planning. And in the next 4 years as mayor, I would continue work on homelessness and housing affordability. I would work on invigorating Commercial Avenue, building connections to the waterfront, but protecting our inclusive small town character. I want to reduce utility bill costs for struggling families and seniors on fixed incomes. And I want to reform and transform city government to make Anacortes the leader in transparency and efficiency and cutting edge delivery of services to people who really need them in our community. I would really appreciate your support and your vote. Thank you.
Whoa, that was perfect. Thank you very much, Ryan. 2 minutes on the nose and very informative. Tammy, would you give us your opening statement?
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Tammy Guffey. I'm an Iraq veteran, an entrepreneur, and a mom of 3. I'm also a suicide attempt survivor. I'm running for mayor because I am the voice for the unheard, the unseen, the unhoused, for those who have lost hope. I believe that even more than inviting people to get involved in politics, how we treat them when they show up is even more important. No longer is politics for the elite, the rich, the privileged. I want to hear from all walks of life, all sides of the table. I will be the mayor that sees people and reminds them the value when the world treats them poorly, unwelcomed, uncared for, and even invisible. Too long have people with mental health, disabilities, harsh pasts, and wild sides been excluded from government on a basis of you should have a clean record, a clear past, and a solid future. But I say to you today, empathy cannot be bought, borrowed, or bargained for. It is earned by the sweat and tears of falling down over and over again and getting up one more time. I want to invite people of my city to get up one more time. More than ever before, the world is ready for more caring, strong, open people to step up, to show up, to speak up for what is important, for what matters to you, and speak up when what's going on isn't right. Our city can do better. I am the mayor who will spend the time rebuilding people, breaking down walls that keep us apart, and building bridges to the community, building bridges in these areas, the communication gap between the city and our people. We can do better. And the compassion gap between the sunrise and the sunset generation. All of us have something to teach and something to learn. So let's open our hearts and minds to the possibility of seeing someone as a generation and not as a generational issue.
Tammy, I'm going to mute you. You've had your 2 minutes. It was good to hear what you had to say, but we're gonna ask you to stop at this point, okay?
I didn't see the timer, so.
That's okay. That's what I'm here
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Statement appreciated very much. Okay, we're going to go to opening statements from the 3 candidates for school board position 1. And oh goodness, I think Celise is going to speak first, then Anastasia, and then Meredith. So Celise, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself, to tell you a little bit about why I'm running for school board, and to also hear your concerns and your questions. My name is Celise Stevens. I'm running for Anacortes School Board Position 1. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, daughter of 2 Air Force veterans, and I graduated from Texas A&M University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Distribution. Upon graduation, I was commissioned in the United States Marine Corps and went on to study electronic countermeasures and fly EA-6B Prowlers, fulfilling a lifelong dream. I married my husband, a fellow Marine, at the tail end of my career, and we had 3 kids in 3 years who are now all teenagers, which is very fun. So I have an 8th grader, a sophomore in high school, and a junior in high school. And I am so thankful that they've had the opportunity to grow up in our Anacortes School District. While our kids were young, I stayed home with them and furthered my own education. I did a 1-year biblical studies program, as well as a master's in education program. I left that program early, got the opportunity to become a business owner, which we've been doing for 9 years now. And it's afforded us a circumstance to stay in the Pacific Northwest, which we find extremely beautiful, having lived all over the country. We love Anacortes. Over the past few months, I've heard more and more families expressing their concerns over their experiences their students are having in the classroom. And I pledge my patient listening ear, my dedication to all of our students, and I will continue to ask the important questions to the right people in order to build those bridges within our district staff towards the solutions of those concerns. I look forward to participating in policy making that empowers our amazing teachers and allows max participation with our parents and good communication that we know will lead to academic achievement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celise. Again, right on the nose with time, and we appreciate that. Anastasia, would love to hear from you.
Great, thank you. So as a military kid, I went to schools both stateside and abroad. I was a kid that desperately wanted to fit in, but each school had different ideas of what being a successful student is. What I love is being with other students who are from all over the world, having different ideas about what the world is and what it holds for us in the future. I have found that the best approach to educating our children lies in the diversity of experience, both academically and socially. It is my belief that exposure to all points of view and student experience enhances the learning of all. My wife and I are dedicated to ensuring this sort of opportunity for our two children and for yours. As your school board director, I will support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the next 5-year strategic plan so that all of our children are seen, heard, and met with quality learning. Advocate for better ways of communicating with families so that all families get clear and consistent information equally. Maintain and create new opportunities for students to access mental health services, supporting fully the social emotional learning component to their learning, and prioritize the continued efforts to implement mentorship for BIPOC LGBTQ+ students so that they too feel seen, heard, and supported. Place our English language learners in classrooms with consistent access to ELL teachers so they thrive in their learning. Advocate for the specific needs of students from military families, migrant families, and students experiencing homelessness so they don't fall through the cracks. And lastly, identify and address the needs of all of our learners at all levels, committing to using best practices while simultaneously committing to dismantling inequitable and therefore ineffective programs. As a district, we care passionately for the education and well-being of our children. I'd be honored to serve our community this way, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. And finally, the third candidate for school board number 1 is Meredith. Hi, Meredith.
Hello, I'm Meredith Mcemoyal, and I am a proud mother of 2 somewhat frustrating but lovely young boys. One is going into 8th grade and one is going into 5th grade. My husband, Sean, works at Anacortes Automotive, and we've been in the community for about 20 years now this fall. I'm running for school board. It was a natural progression for me after volunteering in the school district for so many years. I felt like this was an opportunity to take that to the next level. I feel like our community is divided among a lot of issues, and that it's a really volatile time for us right now. And I don't think there's a place for some of these things in a school board race and on a school board. As a school board member, it'll be our job to set high-level policy and negotiate contracts and set forth the new strategic plan, which I'm really excited about. Day-to-day management of the district is not the role of the school board. I'm looking forward to bringing my experience as a volunteer into this position. I've been in the classroom. I've seen firsthand how hard the teachers work with these students, and I've seen the challenges that they have. And I think it's really important for us as a community and for the administrative team to support the teachers. And I really want to see that be a priority for us. I also realize how it is and how important it is for these early learners to hit their marks so that they can be successful as they move on. My children are receiving an excellent education in Anacortes, and I'm really proud of that. Some of you may be frustrated tonight because I don't have a political agenda per se. And I'm really here to tell you that there's no way I can be an expert on all of it, but I'm an expert community builder, and my collaborative nature and my fair and rational way of thinking will bring a voice to the school board that can represent all families and students in our district.
Thank you very much, Meredith. Let's turn to the 2 candidates for the school board position number 2. And the order will be Diana first, followed by Eric. Diana, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Diana Farnsworth, and I am so happy to be here. I am a librarian here at the Anacortes Public Library. I moved here almost 10 years ago with my husband. Anacortes was the place we knew we wanted to end up, and we lucked out and through a series of unfortunate events ended up exactly where we wanted to be, probably 20 years before we thought we'd get here. And I have worked as an educator, a teacher. I have a couple master's degrees, obviously one in librarianship, and I got to be in my bonnet to run for school board someday when I was in school as a librarian and wanted to know how to get more involved with schools. And they said, think about running for school board. And so I logged it away, and it felt like the right time this year, but it has definitely been on my plan for a while. I believe in listening, first of all, making sure that everybody gets a say and we have time to have conversations. And we're listening first and foremost to our students and their families, to our teachers and our educators who are professionals that we entrust, and of course hold accountable for taking care of our most valuable asset. And then I believe in learning, which means I will not be an expert in everything, but I do know how to do research and learn from experts and make connections. And that's the third thing I believe in doing, which is connecting to the community. And I do that in my job on a day-to-day basis. I believe in equity and inclusion in all things. The first thing I did here in town was find out that not every student had a library card because of the way that our city is set up. And so the first thing I did as a librarian was make sure every school student and teacher and every staff member had a library card. And I'll bring that kind of focus to equity and inclusion and listening to the community and connecting them to this job as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Diana. And last but not least, our other candidate for the second school board position, Eric. Welcome, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I could be here. It was only at the 11th hour that I knew I could make it. We have family in town, like Matt Miller apparently does as well. My name's Eric Shore. I've been living in Anacortes for 19 years. My wife and I own a couple of businesses in town, Anacortes Kayak Tours and Blue Water Outfitters. We've been running those businesses for 18 years here. We moved off of San Juan Island prior to that. I was born and raised about an hour and a half south of here, raised on a little farm down there. Commercial fished through college and fished here in the San Juan Islands and knew I'd want to make a home here. We currently have 2 kids in the district. I have an 8th grader and he's going to be a sophomore next year. I can't keep up at the high school, and love the school. We actually chose to start our business here in Anacortes specifically because of the schools. I've been involved in various boards and committees here in town over the years, and figured school board would be the next natural step. My children are getting old enough that they kind of take care of themselves a little bit. And there has been just so much going on in the last couple of years that have created like some polarization and divides. Like Meredith mentioned, I'm not a politically inclined person. I have strong convictions about certain things, but they're loosely held. I can change my mind after being presented with better evidence. Some of the issues that I'd like to tackle are things like trust. There has been some trust issues. I was guilty of that. That's another reason why I jumped into this race as well. I was making some mistakes on some things that were happening over the last year that weren't necessarily justified. And after learning, I got to change my mind. But anyhow, I want to be more part of the community. I look forward to continuing the journey here in Anacortes.
Thank you very much, Eric. Okay, so we've heard from all of you. I'm busily taking notes because I think some of you have said some things that are going to be fascinating to follow up on. But following the format, we're going to start with a question that was put forward by the Fidalgo Democrats Steering Committee. Because the mayor candidates went first, we're going to hear first from the school board candidates. And I may mess this up, but I'm trying to give everybody equal time. I'd like to start with our candidates for school board position 1. And this time I'd like to hear from Anastasia, followed by Celise, and lastly, Meredith. But that's not right, because Meredith, you went last time. Meredith, how about if you go first? Anastasia, you go second, and Celise, you go third. In the end, this is all going to equal out, but I am doing my best here. So what is the question? What qualifies you to serve on the school board? What is your understanding of the role of a school director? Do you understand that as a school director, you are now an agent of the state? School directors are a state agency. Okay, that's the question. So Meredith, what do you have to say?
And will you remind me, I'm sorry, Shea, I have 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, everybody's got 2 minutes.
Okay. So I've told a few people that the role of the school board could potentially be slightly frustrating to me because I'm somebody that really likes to create something and get in there and get my hands dirty and do the work. That's opposite of what this job is. And so as school board, my role would be to listen to the experts, get all of the feedback that I need, and to set high level policy. It's really exciting to be a potential part of the team that would be writing the next strategic plan, because that's the guiding document for our administrative team. It's their job to manage the day-to-day operations of the district. It is not our role. I think that being really careful about what we think we can and can't do to influence what happens in the classroom is a very fine line to walk. And so I am most excited about the strategic plan. I think we have an amazing administrative team. I can't wait to work with them. I hope, whether I'm school board or not, I'm really looking forward to being a part of what they have going, because there's some exciting things happening in our school district. I think they acknowledge when things don't go right, and they are ready to listen to our community, and the school board will have an opportunity to be a part of those conversations and set that high level policy that guides us.
Meredith, you have a little time left. You haven't told us what your qualifications are.
Oh, thank you. I am the director at the Anacortes Arts Festival. I report to a board of 12 people. I work collaboratively with them on a day-to-day basis to manage our organization. I serve on several other boards as well. And one of the things that I like to tell people is I have one board that I serve on that I have to remove my parent hat every time, because the decisions that I'm making are not always best for my own children and my own family. And I am very comfortable doing that. I've been in a position in this community for a very long time where I've gotten to know people at all age levels and all skill sets. And I really feel like I have my finger on the pulse of what the parents and what our community wants out of our school district.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the reminder.
Anastasia, how would you answer that question?
Well, I am one of the founding board members of the Fidalgo Nature Preschool. We've been in existence for about 4 years now. And so it started out with a bunch of moms at a playground trying to decide, hey, do you want to start an outdoor preschool for our kids? Because our kids weren't in school yet. And I have a son who is very active, and the thought of him sitting in a classroom, even part-time, just wasn't an option. So I thought, yeah, let's do this. And we slowly but surely became a 501c3. We started out at Washington Park, increased in size, and then moved to a place that we could start writing grants. That we actually did get a huge grant, the No Child Left Inside grant, so that we can move to full-time status. We can offer free meals, and just really, really having a good time creating a school that wasn't there before. So I have the second part was what the school board does and our understanding of what it does, right?
What's your understanding of the role of a school director?
Mm-hmm. So absolutely what Meredith had said, that we are there to listen. We're there to listen to each other. We're there to listen to families and parents and community members, and very much listen to the students and what their experience is, and allow all of that, all of these voices to inform us as we move forward in making policies, in establishing good learning, and we're also the boss of the superintendent. So I'm really excited, like Meredith said as well, that this next year will be part of the next 5-year strategic plan. So this means we either dismantle what was done over the last 5 years, or we continue the progress that's been made. And I'm really looking forward to, yeah.
Thank you, Anastasia. Okay, and Celise, same question.
Shea, thank you. So my qualifications, the things that have prepared me for a role like this are, first off, the experience I had in the Masters of Education program that I did. And it really gave me an idea of what do learning standards look like? What do teachers go through to plan out their day or their week or their year for that matter? Also some of the laws associated with education and what does that look like? One of my roles that I had as a Marine Corps officer was also to, I worked in the ComOptiv 4 office, which is operational testing and evaluation, as a coordinator for a couple programs. But it basically was addressing government requirements. I was researching a lot of information for that, and then being able to apply that to the end user. So in this matter, it was the air crew that were going to use anything that was being tested and making sure it was appropriate. So we have our own kids in the district. We've had certainly our own experience with their education process all the way up through now junior year in high school. And I've also been a member of the Northwest United board for the last few years. Northwest United is a soccer club that really serves the entire Skagit Valley. We've got over 500 kids that participate. And one of the very special things I was able to do, and COVID was very interesting to try to
Please, I'm going to interrupt you. You've only got a little time left. We'll give you a few extra. You have not answered what you understand the role of a school director to be.
Sure, no problem. So that's definitely, like they mentioned, the school board is responsible for evaluating the superintendent, for creating policies for the school. They're also supposed to address any parent concerns that arise during the school year as well, some of them publicly. So those are the brief, very brief. I don't know how much time you're going to give me left here.
You're done.
I can stop right there if you want. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, great. All right, let's move back to the other school board race. And if memory serves, Diana went first. So Eric, would you answer that question? You're muted, Eric.
Thank you.
Here you go.
I'm not very good at this even after over a year.
Sure.
Yeah, we're all
That's
fortunate
Shea.
here
That's the guy.
to
Those guys.
Okay, whoever's not muting themselves, please do. Eric's got the floor.
That's okay. We're all lucky that the responsibilities for the school board is pretty well laid out in the RCWs 28A 150.230, so we can always refer to that. And I encourage others to as well. And like Celeste mentioned, it's also to address the concerns of parents. And like Meredith mentioned, it's not to be engaged in the day-to-day operations of the school. That's what the administration does. As far as qualifications go, 18 years as a business owner, multiple businesses, gives me an idea of, well, small business, creative thinking is definitely important. Budgets are important. And my whole entire job is 100% risk management and risk assessment. So I've got a pretty well-tuned meter for that kind of thing, which I think can come into play with different policies that the schools make. And I've served on the Anacortes Chamber Board. I served on a national paddle sports board for a couple of years. And then I've been on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee here in Anacortes, and I still am. And also on the Marketing and Promotions Division for a number of years, although I've been a little distanced from that recently just because life is busy. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's where I'm at.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we've had our first round with our school board members. We're going to turn to the mayors now. I would like to remind everyone attending that you're invited to submit questions via chat to me, and we'll be taking as many questions as we can. The time is actually not very long. Okay, so for the mayor, Tammy, we'll ask you to go first, followed by Ryan, and here's your question. How healthy do you think relationships? Sorry, can you hear me?
Just jumping in there. Are we going to Diana?
No, sorry. Did I skip that? I'm so sorry. Yes, we're going to Diana. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Do you mind repeating the question once?
Not
for
at
me?
all. Not at all. Let me just find it again. Take me 1 second.
Sorry.
No, not at all. And I'm sorry that I neglected
okay.
to do it. What qualifies you to serve on the school board, and what's your understanding of the role of a school director?
Well, my understanding of the role of a school director is, of course, as it's defined by law. What I'm most excited about is also the ability to engage with our community and involve students, parents, community partners in that process. I've already done that a lot, both in my role as a librarian and before as someone invested in the school district. I was on those community meetings to write our current strategic plan, and I am a pretty big fan of it. So I'm excited to get more engaged in that. I think there's a great opportunity. I think there's a great opportunity to focus on getting more community involvement after we've all been so isolated. And so I look forward to using my skills that I practice on a daily basis as a librarian that serves all ages, whoever comes in, being flexible. I think an elected position requires a lot of navigating, and luckily I did my undergrad in communications, so I think I'm pretty good at it, and I really enjoy that aspect of representing what people want. As far as other qualifications, I almost became a teacher, got accepted to Western, and ended up having a health situation where I had to have a surgery, and then found out about a job at the library. So I almost became a teacher. And before that, I had gotten a master's in English and taught in a college. And I taught writing for 3 different levels. And it was down in Southern California. And I saw firsthand what happens when students aren't all prepared equally. And so that's been a really important thing for me in my career, is making sure that lifelong education is a priority. I've also served on the boards with Reading is Fundamental. I work with the Boys and Girls Club. I work with all the service clubs on a regular basis. I have been a member of Sir Optimus, AAUW, and of course, I work with the board on a regular basis at the library. So I feel qualified to do this, and I'm excited for it. Thanks for squeezing me in.
Thank you very much. Spencer, thanks so much for helping me keep track. Now we're ready for the mayor's race first question. And we're going to start with Tammy as soon as I pull up my list of questions again. Okay. How healthy do you think relations are between the city and the Samish Indian Nation and the Swinomish tribal community? What are examples of work between the city and the 2 tribes? Do you think these relationships need strengthening, and how would you do that? I realize, guys, that 2 minutes is not a long time, but do your best. So, Tammy, what have you got to say to that?
Okay, so I'm pretty new to the area, and so I have spent the last few days over on the Swinomish tribe, and I don't know so much about this relationship between the city and the tribes, but I know the future is looking awesome, looking towards working with them on global warming, and suicide prevention is important to me and to them. And so I feel like going forward, it's going to be really healthy and good. And it's just really been a good experience getting out there and meeting people that I never would have met, and having conversations I never would have had. And I think that's important, and that's what this is all about. And so as we go forward, it's just going to get better and better.
Thank you. Okay, Ryan.
Well, I feel a little bit like I'm at an unfair advantage here because I work for the Samish tribe in my day job. But the question is about both the 2 tribes, and I think we ought to distinguish between the 2 because they are very different. Swinomish tribe has a reservation on the far east side of Fidalgo Island there, and the Samish has no reservation. But the Samish is maybe a little more integrated into the city proper with their facility on Seafarers Way and on 30th and 30th and Commercial, and on D Avenue, the Samish Longhouse. I think the city has really no qualms with either tribe, and the city really benefits from the presence of both Indian nations here in Anacortes. So for example, the Samish tribe is contributing substantially to road projects around the city that also benefit Samish, but when they contribute, the city benefits. Samish is going after $10 million for replacement of the Tommy Thompson trestle and causeway, removal of all that creosote with a concrete and steel structure that'll be better for biking, better for pedestrians, and also will be higher and thus protected against near-term sea level rise and storm surge. And Samish is working on a childcare facility on D Avenue Nursery at the site of the former D Avenue Nursery that will really benefit Anacortes, because Anacortes needs childcare really desperately. Swinomish is working on that expansion of their Ditchwallick Center, and I don't want to talk about that because that's going to come to City Council as a quasi-judicial land use matter. And we have to be careful about those kinds of things. But the existing already permitted Ditchwallick Center is a really benefit to the community, because there is a need for substance abuse treatment, even in Anacortes, and that's the only one that we have.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to take the privilege of being the moderator to ask you a quick question. Do you see a conflict of interest for yourself being an employee of the Samish when you become mayor?
No, I would resign my position with Samish. Mayor is a full-time job.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we've now had one round of questions for everybody. We're going to go to a second question, and this time we're going to start with the mayor. So guess what, Ryan, you get to talk again. Also a 2-minute question, and here it is. Do you have any concern about the effect of the far right in Anacortes? Some residents sympathize with and support organizations like the 3% or QAnon, Oath Keepers, etc. Are you concerned about any potential difficulties from these groups in our area, and how would you respond?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that everybody gets to believe whatever they want to believe. I'm not even familiar with all those groups, but one of them, QAnon, I've watched the documentary, and it is pretty concerning what people can be misled into believing. And if the other groups are like that, then I would be similarly concerned about that. Not necessarily for Anacortes, because I don't think that that's a big problem in Anacortes, but for people that are that lose that connection to reality and believe the extraordinarily crazy on some level things that, for instance, QAnon espouses. I don't know how you really deal with that, and if you've got that in your family, how you are able to deal with that. It is potentially a problem that we could face in our city government or in our city generally. I know that in Sequim, the mayor of that little ville has some affiliation with the QAnon delusion. I think it's safe to call it that. And that really affects your ability to govern. So I don't know if I can be any more blunt about it, but it seems to me that that's a really negative thing that's going on in our society. I don't think that it has a big hold in Anacortes or that it's a big problem for us here at the moment.
Thanks, Ryan. Tammy, how would you respond to the question?
So I think extremism on any subject is not the way to go these days. I would focus more on I think a lot of people have more in common than the extreme isms that are going on. I would just kind of agree with what Ryan said. I don't feel that that's such a worry of right in Anacortes, but we just would need to, make sure that we just stick with reality and like sense, and just keep, treating each other kindly, and any groups that are doing things that are hurtful to other people. I just think that has no place here in Anacortes.
Okay, thank you very much, Tammy. Again, a reminder for everyone attending, don't hesitate to send me a question by chat. I haven't gotten any questions yet, and I just want to make sure the system is working. Okay, so we're going to go to a second question for the school board members or candidates. And I may be messing up the order, guys, but you're all going to get the same speaking time. I'd like to start with the school board candidates for position 2. And I'll ask you to have Diana go first and then Eric. And like I say, I may have this messed up, but it'll all come out in the wash. Here is your question. It's a long one. And again, if we may come back to it if 2 minutes isn't sufficient. Your races are nonpartisan, but we're all aware of the toxic political environment gripping our nation and even our wonderful small town. Conspiracy theories, misinformation, or even downright falsehoods and hateful messages have been sent to school district employees and administrators all too frequently with regard to issues of equity, gifted education, sex education, the accurate teaching of history, among others. How do you, as a school board member, plan to address these extreme voices? Please be specific to the extent that you can, but we'd like to understand your position about dealing with this sort of misinformation or hateful positioning. So Diana, the floor is yours.
Sorry, it's hard for me to, do you mind repeating the middle portion of that question for me?
Not at all. It's a long question. It has many parts to it, but the steering committee felt pretty strongly about these issues, so we think it's worth taking the time. Your race is nonpartisan, but we're all aware of the toxic political environment around us. Conspiracy theories, misinformation, or even downright falsehoods and hateful messages have been sent to school district employees and administrators all too frequently, usually with regard to issues that are controversial, like equity, gifted education, sex education, accurate teaching of history, and so on. How do you, as a school board member, plan to address these extreme voices? And we just ask you to be as specific as you can in your answer.
All right. Equity, sex ed, gifted, and what was the fourth one? I'm so sorry. I hope everybody else is listening to these times I'm asking it multiple times.
That's a tough question. And these were just
I know, I just want to make sure I address all your examples.
Okay, equity, gifted education, sex education, the accurate teaching of history.
History, thank you. All right, well, that's a big question. And I work in a place where we order all the books, both sides, even the extreme ones, if they're available and enough people want them. But the role of a school board member, as we've talked about, is to serve our students and our community and make sure that we're meeting what our community has decided is important. And for our school, that means that every student is going to have the ability to meet the really high and ambitious standards that we have. That's one of the core parts of our policy for our school. And I believe that to do that, board members need to listen, but part of that learning is going to experts and I'm going to do a lot more listening than I am talking, because if I hear something, I'm going to check with those experts. I'm very honored to have received the endorsement of our teachers union here. I was interviewed by a panel from, they were all teachers from Anacortes, and I work with those teachers a little bit in my job, but I've gotten to know them and listen to them. And I've listened to students, and I know that what they want overwhelmingly is they want an excellent education. They want to have their needs met equitably. They want to make sure that they're getting the best education and prepared for the real world, which means we're going to use the best history curriculum we have. We're going to use the most accurate, scientifically informed sex ed curriculum that we can find, because that's what our state has voted in as being important. And that's also what our students are asking for. We're always going to have challenge programs for our gifted students. We're also going to make sure that we have funding that can meet those students' needs and can meet the students' needs who are socioeconomically disadvantaged or not getting equitable chances, so that we can prepare every single student for success. So if equity is informing that, I think we're going to be able to do a good job on all of those and have some reason brought to it.
Thank you, Diana. Okay, Eric.
Always forget to hit the mute button. I have to thank Diana for asking the question to be repeated a bunch, because that's a tough one to wrap the head around. I believe that the question was, how would we address the hateful messages that administration and staff were receiving, correct? For me,
That was a part of it. Just to clarify, the overarching question is, as a school board member, how do you plan to address extreme voices about these controversial issues?
oh, okay. Yeah, so I think, I don't know what kind of messages came out prior to 2020, to the pandemic. I assume there's probably always, letters and stuff coming out. I believe that perhaps some of the vitriol that surrounded the last year was just because we had a pretty fractured community. Nobody was able, this is as close as people were getting. Face-to-face is always a better way. I think to address the extreme views, one thing I could see being better would be to increase the levels of communication directly with the community, with the families especially. I think that some of the misunderstandings that happened, at least in the last year, came from maybe unintentional, bungled rollouts of things, or inefficient explanations for why things were happening. I know I had personally a exchange with Dr. Irish early in the pandemic. It wasn't hateful or extreme. It was just a disagreement about something. And we finally decided we needed to meet face to face. So we were going to go for a walk, but we ended up going to lunch because it was raining. And it changed it changed everything about the way I was feeling about that particular issue. So I think it's just that in person, whenever possible, face to face interaction, and being careful with how we roll out the information to the families can avoid some of the misunderstandings. Also, we need to encourage, I think, the families of Anacortes who have kids in the school to engage more with the process. I'm guilty as charged of being someone whose kids were doing just fine, so I was kind of rolling with things. But if we engage families to come and join us, then we won't, and participate, you won't get the misunderstandings, and then these things don't tend to escalate into extreme positions.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, let's go to the other school board candidates, and same question. And I'll ask that we start with Meredith, follow with Celise, and then Anastasia. So Meredith?
So, as I said earlier, I simply don't think that these have a place in conversations about a school board race, but it feels like we're being forced into them, right? And so one of the things I think is really important is not to give fuel to the misunderstandings, the misinformation, and the sometimes blatant lies in order to deceive. So I don't want to give fuel to that. I think that in some school districts around the country, it's come to them regardless if they said, no, we're not going to hear it. It still has come to their door. And it feels very disturbing that people would stomp into a school board room over some of these issues rather than sitting at a table and having rational conversation about them. I've had a number of conversations with people who I don't see eye to eye with on some of these issues over the last month or so. And most of the time we can find a place of common ground. Not always, but sometimes we can. So I think that the first thing in all of them is really not to give them fuel. I think the second thing is to be open to conversation and trying to be empathetic to where someone else is coming from whenever you can. I think the school district desperately needs a communications manager. I don't know how that fits into the budget or not, but I think it's really necessary. We can't expect Justin Irish to manage the team take the policy that the school board writes and make it all happen with magic, and also be the primary communicator for our district. That's not possible. And that's where those mixed messages that Eric talked about really came into play. A lot of the things that we talk about with the gifted programs are that there simply is just misinformation. We're not trying to get rid of the gifted programs. It's okay. We're not trying to teach kindergartners, terrible sex education things. Those things simply are not happening. We're not having conversations about critical race theory in our classrooms. These things are simply not happening. So we need to stand together. We need to calm the fires, and we need to make sure that our district is in a position to communicate to the parents in the community about what's really happening in the classroom.
Thank you very much, Meredith. Celeste.
Thank you, Shea. So I'm glad that this is a nonpartisan position for sure, because all of the focus really should be about the kids and seeing their success to grow up into adulthood for sure. How to address voices you described as confrontational or toxic politically. First, I want to say it is always important for, if parents are speaking up about their kids, it's important for them to be heard. And I'm super thankful that Justin in particular, but our staff in general has created an environment where parents do feel comfortable communicating. And I think keeping that door open is actually really important, even if it comes from either extreme. I think that is a really important door to keep open, to keep that communication flowing. And touching on a little bit of what Eric was saying, if we have a lack of communication, that can sometimes be worse than poor communication. So keeping those efforts flowing both ways and talking about those topics, I think definitely goes a long way to squelching any super extreme controversial topics that might be going on. And then, for those specific items, I would also try to reference directly the Senate Bill 5044 that talks about equity and what's going on there, the Referendum 90 and comprehensive sex ed, and be able to share that curriculum with our parents and say, this is the curriculum that has been put into law. So here are your options as a parent, either to opt out or to feel good about what it is the school's teaching. And if the school has alternative curriculum in mind, I know that if that's how it's being answered and that we're not teaching comprehensive sex ed, for an example, for the school to be able to provide the actual curriculum or example that they are using goes a long way to easing parents' concerns, I think. So being able to address that head on and give specific examples is important.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Somehow the timer has left my screen.
I think I went over a little bit, but yeah.
Oh, great. It's right there. No, thank you. Thank you very much, Celeste. Anastasia, your turn.
Thanks. So I think it's really important to just make sure that we say that it's not about shutting out any voices, right? So we want to make sure that all voices are heard. But I want to make a discernment with the people who are, it sounds like there's different words, but the ones that are bullying. And I have been hearing teachers say that they are sometimes feeling bullied by parents. And yes, we need to listen to parents, and we need to keep the conversations proactive, open, engaging, and not harassing and not bullying. So I feel like it's important to make sure that if the teacher-parent communication isn't working for whatever reason from either side, that we have another protocol set in place. If these voices are coming to the school board meetings, or if they haven't, please do that so that we can have those voices as a school board that we can sit with and make decisions based on what we're hearing. But I don't want to make space for making bullying okay, particularly for our teachers. And I think we can all agree about that, but I just wanted to make sure that we're saying that as well. There is something about the communication with our school district and families and students. There's some miscommunication. And I also agree, we have to have someone that's in charge of the communications for our district so that everyone gets the same information, everyone gets the same curriculum being passed down, so that instead of fighting about what we're doing or not doing, we can just start making conversations about how we're going to implement things and bringing everyone to the table for that.
Okay.
Engaging, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank all of you for those answers. I am getting a few questions on chat. Don't hold back. Okay, we're going to go to another question. We'll start this time with where am I? With the school board position 1 candidates, and I'll ask Celeste to begin, followed by Anastasia, and lastly Meredith. And here's the question. It's a lot shorter than the last one. Oops, I just have to find it again. Okay. How do you think the Anacortes School District should teach about race and American history? We are learning almost every day about new events in American history that were previously unknown to us. And there's been a lot of controversy about how to talk about race with our students. What do you think the school district should do? Celeste, you're up first.
I thank you, Shea. Thank you for the much shorter question too. Yes, so I do think history in particular is constantly changing, and the more you learn, the more you can learn. But I do think that all points of view should be explored. I do ascribe to a history that is comprehensive, but not skewed in any one particular area. So hopefully that, it's a pretty quick answer. Do you want me to expand a little more on that?
Yes, please. I'd like you to be more specific. What is the school district doing now versus what you'd like them to do? And what are the areas in which you think history teaching might be skewed?
Yeah. So if we look at the social studies state learning standards, I would start with that and take a look at what is prescribed from that vein. I think that, for instance, we have curriculum that needs replaced, and as I'm understanding in our district specifically, but I think it should be replaced with something very balanced. And
I want you to be more specific than that, Celeste. What curriculum are you referring to that needs to be replaced?
I am hearing that there are many textbooks that have been around for specific high school courses that definitely need replaced. So I'm speaking specifically of high school. I know we have English language curriculum that was just last year, and those are separate.
The question is about the teaching of American history.
Yeah.
So how do you think the district should deal with the fact that new events, are being uncovered in our history previously unknown?
Perfect. So I think we should explore, because we need a replacement of our curriculum, and specifically at the high school level, I do believe that we should implement a very clear, balanced new history curriculum. And
what does balance mean?
I don't think we need to choose. I think the 1619 history is a bit skewed.
Why is it skewed?
For some people's perspective, because I think even though it is bringing up new historical events and new historical perspectives, I think it does leave behind some of the actual historical events and other historical perspectives that have been taught in the past that are accurate and good for our students to be learning. One of the issues that the students stood up and spoke about at the community engagement was that they did not feel prepared for life out of Anacortes. Many of the students expressed that they wish they had been more prepared for their adult life. I think a lot of that does come from continuing to reach out and gather all perspectives and all differing perspectives and making sure that that's inclusive for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anastasia, do you need me to repeat the question or are you okay?
Would you mind?
Not at all, because it's really quite short. The question is, in light of new information that's coming up about our American history and dealing with racial issues, the question is, how should the Anacortes School District teach about race and American history?
Mm-hmm. I think they should teach it. I think it's great. I know that from my understanding, hearing students and some teachers talk, that we don't have set curriculum per se. So some of our students are getting American Revolution 3 times in their school career, and then some are getting it once and getting more world history. So we need to first kind of set what exactly we're doing consistently and then adding to that. So when we talk about hearing the many voices that make up our American history, I am so in favor of that. I think that really makes our students more prepared for a world of diverse experiences and voices. I think it helps us understand who we are as Americans so that we can move forward together. I think it's lovely, and we do need to replace our textbooks that reflects that, and not in a way that we make modules about certain people's voices, but that we include all of them together as our whole one voice, if that makes sense.
So let me just pursue this a little bit more and try to get a little more specificity.
Sure.
Well, over the past year or two, there have been many Black Americans murdered, and it's created a furor in our country. And we've learned more and more episodes like the Tulsa massacres that I dare say all of us knew nothing about in terms of our American history and how African Americans have been treated. This is a controversial subject, and the question is, how should the Anacortes School District deal with it in the teaching of American history?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I have my own view, but I also know that I have to adhere to what is being passed down to us, the regulations to support the curriculum from the state. So I know there is, I can't remember, is it 5044 that's talking about teaching about structural racism, talking about giving teachers more training in racism and equity. And so I think that's really important. I think when we talk about these more controversial experiences that have happened in our society, in our culture, that we want to make sure that we are supporting that learning, not just about, hey, this is what happened to George Floyd, but that, hey, this happened to George Floyd, and let's talk about this whole structure around how this has come to be and how we can make this different as we go into our future, because the students obviously are our future, and we don't want them to repeat history. We want them to know it so that they can understand it and move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Meredith, same question to you.
I think it's interesting because there's a difference between, the actual curriculum itself and then what it's taught, almost the soft side of it, right? And how it's taught. And, there's really nothing controversial about acknowledging our differences. And when we teach each other and our kids about our differences, we really learn to appreciate each other's differences. So, regarding curriculum, I'm simply in favor of teaching history as history is. And what happens is that as we uncover more knowledge, it suddenly becomes controversial to teach that new part that we've uncovered, because as 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds, that's not what we learned. Well, that's okay. It's okay that that's not what we learned. And it's okay that our kids learn this. So I am not familiar, I would tell you, with how, what the current curriculum is called in social studies and, what we could adopt, but I would definitely be in favor of a continual, the beautiful thing about education is it can always be updated and that people are always finding new ways to teach it. Yes, let's teach the history as we know it. And let's make sure that the kids are learning all sides to issues so that they become the great thinkers that we think they're going to or that they need to be. And then at the end of the day, we have to support the teachers, right? The kids are hearing about race issues outside the classroom, whether it be from friends or in the community or walking down the street or from their parents. So we really need to make sure that the teachers have a way of teaching that teaches as balanced and fair as it can, and that we support them so that they're not scared. I have teachers in other states where critical race theory has been banned, and they're scared to talk about things like the Tulsa Massacre because they're afraid that someone's going to come after them for it. So we need to support our teachers. We need to give them the right curriculum, make sure it's balanced, and then support them in teaching it.
Meredith, what exactly do you mean by balanced?
By balanced. Shea, there is policy that makes sure that teachers are, if there are two sides to an issue, if we're talking about, sorry that a great example is not coming to me, but if we're talking about the Civil War, right? And that we make sure that we know, what happened on both sides, or if we're talking about what happened with George Floyd, that we're covering all things that happened about the George Floyd incident, that we're not just talking, we're not presenting it's bad police officers. We're simply presenting the facts that are there before us. So teachers have a policy in which they are not to interject their personal opinion into these topics, into most topics. But you know what? We're all human. And there are a few teachers that I have heard of who have slipped along the way and brought some of their personal opinion in. But you know what? That's passion. And there's ways that the administration handles things when teachers do that. And it's, they will work to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I think we have to forgive them sometimes because these are really charged issues. And I don't think they're intentionally trying to push their own values on our children.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think now we get to pose the same question to our candidates for school board position 2. Eric, why don't you go first and Diana to follow?
Sure, thanks. That's a good question. I majored in American Indian Studies in university, got my degree at the University of Washington. Part of it was because I was a bit of a history nerd and I wasn't feeling like I was getting the full story. And so I went into that because I figured that that's a different narrative altogether. I was fortunate enough that the head of the department, a wonderful woman, took me under her wing, so to speak, set me straight. Because I was at that point in my life very ideologically minded, and I wanted to sort of hate on my American history. And she said, Eric, you have to understand people are people, and people are brutal in the past, even the natives. And she's right. And the history, obviously we all know the dark side of the history of Western expansion across this continent for sure. Fewer of us know, for instance, Ryan probably knows it, like the Samish were slave owners. I feel like we need to avoid the mistake of developing curricula that presents either a cynical or a triumphal view of our diverse American society and Western culture in general. I think we can honestly acknowledge the failures and injustices of the past, while at the same time emphasizing constructive principles, which enabled America to do what it's done, the good things that it's done. And that, I think if we do it that way, then we'll create an optimistic or optimism really for the American future. And I think that's good for the kids. I think we just have to be real careful about implementing I guess lessons that give a darker notion of what America is, because younger people, they just don't have that nuanced sense of things, and so they can develop a depression and anxiety over things like that. So my time's up.
Thank you, Eric. So you're concerned about presenting a darker image
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you to elaborate on that a little bit. There are dark moments in our country's history.
Right. But what I'm talking about is if a teacher, and I don't think this is happening right now in Anacortes, and I would like it to not happen, but if a teacher or an authority figure, or actually in general culture, if you focus on the darkness, then darkness is what you'll get, especially in young minds. And so I think that if we're talking about America as being fundamentally racist and everything that you see as an injustice, every interaction, any kind of confluence of people, there's an oppression narrative going on in young kids' minds. That's a tough thing for them to kind of work through, and they won't know how to deal with it. And so I think you can end up with creating a lot of anxiety and inadvertently painting a picture of American society as being an inherently bad thing. We can all understand it.
So how would you, I mean, I think most of us, all of us would agree that our students deserve an accurate education about their own history, the history of their own country. So how would you present, and I appreciate your concern sincerely for our students' mental health. COVID has been a terrible time for so many of them, and mental health issues are quite real. But can we ignore the history that we're learning about? How would you find the balance, to use others' words, in presenting these events of which we are not proud? How shall they be taught in the Anacortes School District?
That's a great question. I mean, it's something I've been wrestling with now for a couple of weeks. I've been researching, trying to find someone who's developed. I know because of the hot button issue now, it's just kind of blown up with critical race theory. There's a lot of movement that's really inspiring me. And it gives me a lot of hope, I should say. There's a lot of movement for people that are concerned about intolerance and racism to create curricula that doesn't just present one either, I guess call it whitewashed version of American history, but also doesn't stray into the narrative that racism is everywhere and prevalent. You know, I don't believe that I'm glad, but it's relatively rare compared to past, and it needs to stay that way. But you have to be age appropriate, of course. You can't teach a third grader about, massacres and things like that. They won't know how to deal with that. But as the kids get older, I think that, you absolutely have to tell them everything about the good and the bad things of Western expansion.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Okay, Diana, you are our last respondent to this question.
I feel like this is just going to be me, but do you mind? I've been trying to listen and learn here, and do you mind reading it one more time?
I really don't. It's
Thank you.
I just have to find it again. So give me a chance on my little list here. I'm not as organized as I might have liked to be. How should the Anacortes School District teach about race and American history?
How?
Yes.
With fantastic qualified educators that we entrust and train and support both financially and with continuing education and with quality curriculum and a policy that supports them doing their job. In Anacortes, every parent I've talked to, even if we don't agree about everything, wants their kid to have the best possible education. I have great faith in children and teens. That's who I work with. That's who I've always worked with my entire career, and it's my volunteer time. We say when you read a book at whatever age, usually kids get what they're ready to get out of it. I believe that students, they have to prepare for some drills that were not a part of most of our education that are life-threatening, and they're aware of that. I've talked to first graders about that. We cannot hide the reality of the world. no, I do not think we need to be going into in-depth on things that they can learn when they're a little older, when they're young. But bullying happens when you're young. Systemic racism or demonstrated racism that might come from an unknown bias or a system that we didn't even realize was in place can absolutely impact the way that we interact and learn from a very young age. So I don't think we're here yet. I know it's been in the media, but I know for a fact that there's nothing close to any of the curriculums that are part of the hot button issues being taught anywhere in a K-12 system. They're postdoctorate level studies or their theories, which is great because we're thinking and learning. And what we realized was if everybody who wrote history had the same skin color and was the same gender, we might be missing some parts of history. And as we discover those and better curriculum is created, we should use whatever is the best and make sure that our school supports that.
Okay, thank you very much, Diana. I'm going to take just a second of privilege. A couple of candidates have mentioned in Gross Senate Bill 5044, which passed the legislature this past session. And it has led some folks to believe that this term, critical race theory, will be taught in our schools. And I hope that everyone has read the bill. It's not that long, or if you haven't, but it requires professional training updates for our educators and for our school district members on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It sets no requirements for how school districts will change anything they do. There are no mandates about teaching. There are no mandates related directly to students. So it is about broadening horizons, educating our educators, including our school district members. And I think that's an important point for everyone to know. Okay, I think now, and it's hard for me to keep track, it's our mayor's turn. Am I right? And if I get out of order at any point, please let me know. So I have a new question, and this time, Eric, oh, excuse me. Ryan, I think you get to go first this time. Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, this is also a bit of a long question. Happy to repeat it as much as anyone wants. It appears that Skagit County will be getting an Amazon fulfillment center near the Burlington Airport with impacts on traffic, employment, and probably housing. Growth and economic development often conflict with our community's interest in preserving natural environment and reducing climate impacts. How do we best balance these competing interests? How do we deal with an Amazon fulfillment center? And what are examples of projects you would be supporting as mayor that would give us this kind of balance? Ryan, you want to grapple with that?
Well, I guess I would first say objection, compound question. But yes, I have heard that we'll be getting an Amazon fulfillment center out at Bayview Ridge. That's outside the city limits, so it's not the purview of the Anacortes Planning Department. And I don't think that the county planning department is well positioned to deal with those impacts that you mentioned, which are frequently the case. So we can talk specifically about the Amazon fulfillment center. I don't know how we will manage those impacts, and I'm not sure how many of them will reach out and touch Anacortes. I think that they will have substantial impacts on Mount Vernon and Burlington. But the more general question of how to deal with the conflict between growth or development and the impacts that it brings with it, including traffic, including climate impacts, I think is a useful one. In Anacortes, development is not always going to yield negative climate impacts, I would say. If we can focus growth onto transit lines, if we can have development near services, I think that we can have a net benefit on climate impacts. In the alternative, if we build jobs in Anacortes and don't build housing in Anacortes, I can guarantee you we will fill those jobs, but we'll fill them with people that are commuting from Cedar Woolley or from Bellingham or further beyond, because people have a high tolerance for commuting, and that clogs up our streets. We have to have a holistic approach to balancing the needs of housing and the needs of jobs in our community. I think we've seen right now that a bunch of businesses are unable to open or fill their hours because we don't have workers that are here and are willing to work because they can't get childcare, or they're not physically present because they can't get housing here. So we need to address all of those things at once.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Tammy.
Okay, can you repeat the question again, please?
Absolutely. I can. I just keep getting lost in my list. It appears that Skagit County will be getting an Amazon fulfillment center near the Burlington Airport with impacts on traffic, employment, and perhaps housing. Growth and economic development often conflict with this community's interest in preserving the natural environment and reducing climate impacts. How do we best balance these competing interests when they do compete? And are there any examples of projects you think that you would support as mayor that can do both?
Okay, so, well, I think it's great that we have a lot of forest lands in Anacortes. And definitely, I've been talking to people about their feelings of growth. And I've been researching this idea of having a growth cap. I feel like we need to get more balanced as far as, like Ryan said, people who work here can't afford to live here, and that causes a whole bunch of other problems. So if we could get a plan where we had a balance, a building and growth cap, then we could work on projection in the future as in a meaningful way, rather than just overgrowing faster than we can maintain the balance.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to a little bit more of a lightning round because we don't have a lot of time left. I'm going to turn to our school board candidates for this. And really, I've lost track of the order. So we're going to start with Diana, followed by Eric. And here's the question. And it was submitted by one of our attendees. Our child is transgender. What will you do to assure that he or she and all members of the LGBTQ plus community are safe and respected in our schools and able to use the bathroom of choice without feeling in danger? Diana, you want to take that?
Yeah, it's such a tough question because I would like it if it was a non-issue, because no child should have to deal with that on top of all of the other things, academic responsibilities, figuring out social life. What I would do to support that your child and every child feels safe is everything I possibly can. I have listened to so many students, often speaking for their friends, some actually sharing their experiences in support of stronger policies that ensure that pronouns, names, sports, clubs, all those things are such a part of, so let me separate the pronouns and names and recognition of who every child is a part of how they are identified in their classrooms. And I know that the school has a policy in support of this. I hear that things still happen. Of course they do, but I've spent the last year on the anti-racism advisory committee. I've been on a lot of advisory committees with the school over the years, but even in that, while we weren't talking about.
Diana,
yeah.
I'm going to be very rude and apologize. Okay. I meant for this to be a 1-minute response.
Oh.
And that's my fault. I didn't say it. Do you mind? You've given us the answer.
Can I see if I can wrap it up in a second?
Yep.
I had another example for why I would bring that up. So let me see if I can say it
I'm
quickly.
sorry, that was totally
No,
my.
it's okay. I also support us making sure that we have policies that our teachers know what to do and how to implement those, and training so that they're all on the same page to support the policy. So
Okay,
for all students. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Eric, your turn. I did mean for this to be a 1-minute question. Diana took a good minute and a half, so feel free.
No, it's fine. I agree with Diana that it would be nice if it was a non-issue. I think that the best answer I can give you is that there's pretty good policies in place, laws as well on the state level and federal level. And I think as long as we're enforcing those, then we're doing good. I don't know what the enforcement is in terms of how good they've been doing that or whatnot. But yeah, if we enforce the policies in place and the laws in place, then all the children should be protected.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to the other candidates, and Anastasia and Celise and Meredith, would you go ahead in that order?
Sure. So everything supporting the trans policy that's already there. Also acknowledging that our LGBTQ plus community, our students are 67% annually attempting suicide, that they're a very vulnerable population, and we need to make sure that they are supported in school in many ways, including having mentorship and seeing trans folks, non-binary, other LGBTQ folks represented in the school, in staff, in teachers, and other places.
Thank you. Okay. Celise.
Thank you, Shea. So to address the bathroom choice, as the other candidates have said, there are some great policies in place and laws in place that we should absolutely follow. This is a subject that definitely comes with a great deal of sensitivity and understanding that every student shares those same universal civil rights and liberties and needs to be valued, and then in turn value others very equally. Every student deserves to be treated with dignity. And I can say that, in our experience with our business, we've had several trans or LGBTQ members and or staff members, and we have created an environment that has absolutely been accepting and brought value to each individual person for the unique person that they are. So I would hope that that environment and that climate could also be portrayed through our staff, through our teachers, and communicated to the students and parents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Meredith.
I'll ditto the hiring processes and the following of policy and making sure that they're, taken how they need to be. But I want to talk just for a minute. I think that Bill 5044 could really help with some of this because it helps support the teachers in understanding who kids are and meeting them at their place. It might give more teachers the understanding of how to support students. I think that encouraging connectedness, so making sure that all students have a place that they feel connected to a teacher, to a counselor, to a staff person or more, that they have the opportunity to belong after school, to clubs, just making sure that they have a home, that they have a place, like creating that culture, I think would go a long way into supporting those students.
Okay, thank you. All right. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to make some concluding remarks. And we have so many more questions, but I'm going to try this. I think this is going to be tough. I've received questions from folks who've looked at websites and had questions about some of the comments that they saw. So this is for our school board members, and it's just going to be sort of helter-skelter because I was cutting and pasting questions. So hang in there with me. I'd like to start with Anastasia. You mentioned that due to moving frequently, you saw, quote, different ways of teaching that could help students and broaden the district's reach. Could you take 1 minute, please, and be very specific? What are you referring to? What would you do differently?
Yeah. So in one experience I had in middle school, I was taught about Native American history by doing a group project with other students. And I wasn't labeled as anything in particular, but somehow I was taken out of the classroom and put in this special place with other kids and did this project together. And I know that the other students did not have that. Then I moved, and this was in American Forces School. And then I moved to Tacoma and went to Spanaway Middle School. And there was like a math learning that had different cards to it, and that you went at your own pace. But there was this unspoken rule about the way in which the color coding of the math meant you were at higher levels. So you were not given much information about what you were doing, but that you just go at your own pace. And then you notice that everybody else is in orange and you're still in green. So you know you need to move up and do that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm
That
only
was a minute. Wow.
I'm only giving you a
Okay.
minute. Thanks.
Sorry.
We don't have too much time left. Diana, I'd like to ask you a question next. Your website is lovely. You clearly are a team player, history of educator, good listener and learner. However, there are no specifics on your website about what your goals are should you become a school board member. Can you give us your top 3 goals?
Yeah, I can. My top 3 goals are that we focus on the whole student and we support their needs. I think in this next year, kids coming back to school, mental health is going to be incredibly important, and we're going to need to make sure that we have the staffing to support that. So that's my number 1 goal, is going to be making sure that everyone can feel safe and ready to learn, and that we have policies that make sure that they're ready for that. My second one is prioritizing the strategic plan and making sure we continue to have a really great equity and diversity and inclusion plan that helps our teachers continue to learn and grow, whether we're talking about history, whether we're talking about bathroom access, whatever is going on, group learning, that we're being inclusive. And then my third is, it wavers, but it's going to be to trust our educators and do our research and make sure that we have the best people and the best supports that they need to do their job well.
Thank you. Celeste, you're next. Your social media page has a statement, and I'm quoting, "Our kids have frankly had enough of the continued focus on gender identity, sexuality, social justice, equity, and anti-racism." Could you expand on that and talk about where your conclusion has come from?
Sure, thanks for asking that question. So that is a statement that specifically applies to classroom time, and that though some of those subjects were being continually talked about in place of academic time. And so it is not to say that those are not valuable conversations. They're absolutely valuable subjects and conversations to discuss at the age appropriate level. But in the sense that some of my own kids, but absolutely of the parents that I've been communicating with in the past few months, there were many, many concerns that some of those conversations were either happening too often or to a degree that was replacing the academics that parents were hoping that their kids would be getting. And honestly, especially for COVID, school became so convoluted for kids, but to have an opportunity to almost escape what's going on in the world with subjects like math and science and English, grammar, and history. I think kids definitely wanted to be able, on a mental health status, to be able to connect with their teachers on academics, not political topics.
Hey, thanks for that answer. Eric, get back to my questions here. Sorry. Where did it go? Nope. Here we go. Sorry. Eric, your website states that, quote, I will not identify with the noisy edges of the spectrum of opinions, unquote. Could you clarify what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that there's, I don't know, I'm gonna throw out a number that's not real, but 10% on the radical left and 10% on the radical right that are making lots of noise. And the 80% of us that are somewhere in the middle are kind of sitting quietly and watching this circus happen. And that's more where I'm at. I'm nonpartisan. I'm not ideologically bound. I tend to recoil from all ideologies as being inherently just something I just don't trust. I don't know why, but so yeah, I'd like to be that voice for the people in the center that I think is the most of us, that don't want to get caught up in this barrage of culture war stuff. There are things that I definitely am concerned about within that, but yeah, I don't identify with the noisemakers, the Twitter mob, those folks.
Okay, thank you. Meredith, question for you. You mentioned that on your website that your children are getting an excellent education, but there are some places that miss the mark. What are those places?
So there's probably, one of the things that I really dislike is coming up with all that is wrong. So I'll just hit a few things that I feel like could have been good for my children. One of them is communication with parents from a district level. There's some, I was in a classroom for a lockdown drill. I had the opportunity to see what happens and be there with the kids. There was not a message to the parents that happened that day. I'd love to see that so that the parents can be able to talk to their children about that at the end of the day. I'd love to see that. My children both tested into the challenge program, but we chose not to take that path for family reasons. I'd love my children to have access to some of that rich curriculum without having to be a part of that program. I think that when we come to things like Black History Month and the teachings of those, I would love if it wasn't 3 white counselors teaching about Black history. I would love if there was a Black person teaching our kids about Black history. So I think that there's some things, we're not doing them extremely wrong. I just think that there are things that my children could have had a slightly better experience and I could have had a slightly better experience in a few of these areas.
Thank you. I think I've asked a specific question to each school board candidate. Did I miss anybody? Okay. In that case, it's now 8:46. We said that the forum would end at 9. Obviously, people are free to come and go whenever they like anyway, especially as this is Zoom. But I would like to give each candidate a moment to say something in closing that perhaps they haven't had an opportunity to say before. So let's start with our mayoral candidates. Tammy, how about a minute?
Okay, a minute. Okay.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Spencer. You're following me really well.
1 minute?
Yes, please.
Okay, I just want to say thank you everyone for being here. It's such a journey and a joy. I've loved this process. And this is what I want to see more of, more people getting together, having conversations, learning and growing. I think the world is ready to heal, and we're going to do it this way by meeting together, each other's ideas. And more than anything, I just want you to know how valuable you are and that you have an important place in our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy. Ryan, a minute for you.
Yeah, thank you. In Anacortes, the work of the mayor is the chief administrator, the representative most closely aligned with the people of Anacortes, but also the leader. And we need to keep all three of those aspects of the job in mind as we choose our mayor. It's not just who can run the city, although that is very important. And I've got 14 years as a municipal land use law attorney and 5 years managing government planning departments and familiarity with government finance. But it's also who can lead the city to identify what's missing, identify our untapped potential, take us where we need to go, not just where we've been. And it's who represents the city, especially who can represent Anacortes' values and who can articulate our shared vision. I want the very best for Anacortes. I want Anacortes to be the best it can be. I want high performance and high standards. I want people to be proud of their city and proud of their government and proud of how their tax dollars are spent. I want to preserve our quality of life. But at the end of the day, I do believe it's about our community that makes living here worthwhile. So thank you all. And thank you all for your commitment to Anacortes.
Thank you, Ryan. Meredith, a minute to close or wrap up or say whatever you haven't had a chance to say.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So I feel like there's a lot of conversations about what's wrong with our school district happening. And I guess that's what happens in a campaign and in a race. But really, there's a lot right with our school district. And I think to bring all of the criticism just, brings up all of the points that, are negative and fuels fires that don't need to be fueled. So I think you'll find that I'm just going to continue to work to be fair and rational. And I am a liberal-minded Northwest woman, but I really find that I'm able to remove myself from those things when it comes to being elected and representing a population. And so, what I promise is that it's not just about my kids, that it's about all of the kids in Anacortes, and I am well positioned to be able to do that and manage my role in the school board in a fair manner.
Thank you. Anastasia.
Thank you, Shea, and thank you, Fidalgo Democrats, for hosting this forum, and thank you to the candidates running. I am just always so impressed by how passionate we all are for our students here in Anacortes. And I just want to make sure that we are going forward acknowledging that we do have voices that aren't being heard as we think about the school director position. I want to make sure that all voices are heard, all the students are being acknowledged, and that they have a say in what happens in their school. I think that we have a great school, we have a great superintendent, and I want to be the person to help support what the board does and what the superintendent does in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Celeste.
Thank you, Shea, and thank you to the Fidalgo Democrats as well. It's been echoed here, and I'm so thankful for this time. Even by Zoom, we get to see faces and have communication, and it becomes very apparent that we agree on more than we don't agree on. We have more in common than we have differences, I believe. Like Eric described, those fringe edges, I think where we can always meet with one another. I've been thankful to meet with each of the candidates for school board this year so far, and it's nice to have those face-to-face conversations. So what I would love for your group to know, or for Anacortes to know, is that as a school board member, I have kids as my top priority. I want to absolutely, and their academics as the number one thing that we need to focus on. And that's for all students. But I want the teachers to feel empowered. And I would like to do whatever it takes to support those teachers and allow them to do the incredible work that they do with love every day. I then would love to see open communication with parents and hopefully that brings us to a point where we can enjoy gathering with one another.
Thank you, Celeste. Eric, final minute for you.
Yeah, I'd like to also thank you for squeezing me in last minute since I originally wasn't going to be able to attend. This has been great. I guess the only thing I would hope is that no matter what faces are on this board after the election, that we all can find a way to get Anacortes families to engage in their children's education, meaning like participate in school board meetings and become aware. I think a lot of the misunderstandings and vitriol that we can see will be alleviated by that participation. I'm somewhat embarrassed that I've been that guy, busy life and all that stuff. I'd also like to ask if you guys to tell your friends to contact me if they have questions about who I am. Some people think I might be one thing and they might be wrong. I might be kind of hard to get a hold of for the next few weeks. We're experiencing a very busy summer with our business, which is great after last year, but I'm open.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, and finally, Diana.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for anybody who's sticking around for this final statement. Meredith and I were invited to a house a couple days ago with a lot of parents and some teachers. And I'm glad she mentioned the someone in charge of communications with the district. I'd like to tie in my priorities. I can't answer everybody's questions. I wish I could see you all in person. But what we learned, I think, over the last year is the importance of communication. I know I failed at it a lot at the library, trying to make sure there were enough videos and enough places people could find out all the changes that were happening. And I know that that's a big responsibility that requires real support with a budget and a team. So I do think that communication is going to be incredibly important. And to that end, I'm having a kickoff on Thursday at Pelican Bay at 5:30. My website will be updated. I work full time and I'm trying to listen before I opine too much. But I thank you so much for your time and look forward to hopefully supporting all our students on the school board.
Thank you, Diana. And I just want to check everybody. I gave everybody a turn to have a final minute. Did I leave anybody out? Okay, no. So, Pete Buttigieg, I'm going to quote him. He said, in local government, it's very clear to your customers, your citizens, whether or not you are delivering. What we hoped to begin to accomplish tonight was to see whether each of you who is trying to be the elected, how will you deliver on services? I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to be here, both candidates and those attending in the audience. Thank you again for sending questions. I wish we could have asked many more questions. Clearly, there were so many important topics that we didn't get to. And I think no matter how we ask the question, your answers leave us with more questions. So I want to encourage everyone, go to these candidates' websites, read their voters' pamphlet statements, take them up on their offer of a phone call. Whether you think you're going to support someone or not, go to their kickoff event or go to some other event, hear them firsthand in other environments, speak to them personally. There is nothing like local government. And I think all of us recognize the times are changing. Anacortes is facing some significant issues. Our school district is very important to us, whether we have school-aged children or not. So to that end, thank you again to the Fidalgo Democrats for this opportunity to deal with these very important local races. And now I want to turn it back to Barbara Cooper, who's chair of the Fidalgo Democrats. Barbara, unmute yourself.
Oh, I've muted myself.
There you go.
Thank you. I really want to thank her for being such a balanced and together a moderator. She's taken on a big role, and I really want to thank you. You did a fabulous job. I want everybody to know that this is being recorded. So if you want to re-listen to part of it, it's going to be on a YouTube. It'll probably take a few days to get it I wanted to thank Brad, even though he had to leave, he set everything up and really appreciate that. And also Spencer Lively, who was our timekeeper. Thank you so much for doing that. He would like to make a quick political announcement in a few minutes, but I just want to thank the audience. Thank you all for coming and spending time. If you'd like to stay on afterwards, I'll stay on for a few minutes. If people would like to chat, please feel free to do that. I don't have to leave the second that it hits 9 o'clock. So really appreciate all of your time and energy and efforts. And thank you all for running. These positions are a lot of work. I personally was on the school board, so I know how much work it is. I wasn't mayor, obviously, but I bet you that's even quite a bit of work as well. So thank you all so much.